Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're heading to Hong Kong.
Ugh.
Specifically, we're going to be looking at service apartments in Wanchai.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Maybe some of our listeners are thinking about planning a trip and want to know more about this kind of accommodation.
Yeah, could be. Or maybe they're just curious about what makes these service apartments unique.
That's true too.
Mm.
Either way, we've got this great blog post titled, Discover the Best Service Apartment in Wanchai, Hong Kong for your next stay.
It's got all kinds of insights, and we're going to break it all down.
Perfect. Let's dive in.
So, the post talks about how Wanchai is this blend of old meets new. But before we get into that, can we maybe just take a step back? For any listeners who aren't familiar, what exactly are we talking about when we say service apartment?
Oh, yeah, good point.
Yeah.
So basically a service apartment. It's like a furnished apartment,
Uh-huh.
but it also has all those hotel-like services.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, so you get like a full kitchen and living area, separate bedroom, bathroom, of course.
Mhm.
Right, the basics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you also get housekeeping and laundry service. Sometimes they even have a 24-hour concierge.
Oh, wow. Fancy.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a hybrid between a hotel and a regular apartment.
Exactly. You get that privacy and space of an apartment,
Yeah.
but you also have the convenience of a hotel.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And so then Wan Chai, this area of Hong Kong, what's the deal with that old meets new thing the blog keeps mentioning?
Well, Wanchai has a really interesting history. It's gone through a lot of changes over the years. It used to have kind of a rough reputation.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But now it's this vibrant hub. It's got these historic landmarks next to modern skyscrapers, and there's a really thriving business district, too.
So it sounds like it has a lot of character, like
Yeah.
a lot going on.
It definitely does. There's this interesting mix of architecture. You have the traditional buildings, the Tonglao, they're called?
Kung Lao. Okay.
Yeah, these
Yeah.
really charming houses with balconies, and they're right next to sleek, modern buildings. It's very cool visually.
I bet. I can picture it. So what about the cultural stuff? What can people see and do in Wanchai?
Culturally, Wanchai is super diverse. You've got everything from traditional Chinese temples to architecture from when Hong Kong was a British colony, and even some really cool modern art galleries.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Hmm.
the Blue House is a good example.
At the Blue House.
Yeah, it's this historic building built in the 1920s. It's like a perfect example of what that neighborhood's all about architecturally.
Okay, cool. I remember the blog also mentioned this Wanchai Heritage Trail. What's that?
Oh yeah, that's a walking tour. It takes you past all the most important historical and cultural spots in Wanchai.
So like a guided tour.
Pretty much, yeah. It's the best way to understand the history of the area, really see how Wanchai has changed over time.
That sounds really interesting. So just to kind of bring it back to what we were talking about before, we've got this really interesting mix of old and new in Wanchai. Lots of history and culture, modern energy too.
Right.
And we've got these service apartments, which are like a unique way to experience a place. So how does Wan Chai's vibe, how does that influence the kinds of service apartments you find there?
Well, because Wanchai is so diverse, you're going to find a lot of variety in the service apartments too.
That makes sense.
Yeah, some of them, they're in these restored historic buildings, so you get that traditional, more intimate kind of feeling.
Oh, nice. Like a boutique hotel almost.
Yeah, kind of. But then others, they're in these high-rise buildings, amazing city views, and super modern facilities.
Oh, I bet. So it's almost like you choose the service apartment that matches the part of Wan Chai you want to experience.
Exactly. That's one of the best things about it. You can stay in the heart of the business district, or you can be in a quiet residential area near the historical stuff. It all depends on what you're looking for.
Okay, cool. So let's get into some more specifics now. The blog post mentions that service apartments in Wan Chai have all kinds of amenities. Rooftop pools, state-of-the-art gyms. What else can people expect?
Well, a lot of these places, they really go above and beyond to make sure you're comfortable. So in addition to the gyms and pools, they often have business centers. Some even have concierge services like we talked about.
I was curious about those business centers. What kind of things do they have there?
Usually you'll find meeting rooms, high-speed internet, obviously,
Makes sense.
and printing services. Sometimes you can even get secretarial support if you need it.
Oh, wow.
It's perfect for people traveling for work. You need to stay connected and get things done.
So you can work right from your apartment.
Absolutely. And like I said, Wanchai is a big business hub, so you're usually really close to all the major companies and stuff.
Oh, that's so convenient. Now, something else the blog mentioned, pet-friendly service apartments.
Yeah.
Is that a common thing there in Wanchai?
It's becoming more common. Yeah, Hong Kong in general is getting more pet-friendly, so a lot of these service apartments are adapting.
Cool.
Yeah, you'll find places with pet beds, food bowls, sometimes even special areas for pets.
Like a little dog park on the roof, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. Some places will even do pet sitting or dog walking for you.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. So, okay, we've got great amenities, a really cool neighborhood, and this flexibility with the apartments themselves. But the big question, how expensive is Wanchai?
A lot of people think it's really expensive, but it's not always true. There are definitely luxury options, but there are also a ton of affordable service apartments.
Okay, good to know. So what's the price range like then for the service apartments, I mean?
Well, it really depends on a bunch of things: size of the apartment, location, what amenities it has, and of course, the time of year you're going.
Right, makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's say someone's on a tight budget. What are their options?
Studio apartments are always a good bet if you're traveling solo or as a couple. They're small, but usually well designed, so you have everything you need without feeling cramped.
Okay, and what if you need a little more space? Like, what the next step up in terms of price?
Then you'd probably go for a one bedroom. They have a separate living area. So that's good if you need a bit more room to spread out.
Right, right. And then for people who are really trying to save money, there are shared apartments, right?
Yes, those are great for keeping costs down, especially if you're staying for a while. You get your own bedroom, but you share the kitchen and living room with other people.
So kind of like a hostel, but with more privacy.
Exactly. And it can be a fun way to meet people, maybe find some new travel buddies.
Cool. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, what about the really fancy service apartments, like the luxury options?
Right. Well, the blog post mentions a couple specifically, the Luna and the Johnston.
What makes those places so luxurious? Like, what sets them apart?
It's a whole other level of experience. They're much bigger, of course, and the furnishings are really high-end, really stylish designs. Plus, they're in the best locations in Wanchai.
Oh, I bet.
It's not just about the space, though. It's like a whole lifestyle thing.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Like, imagine walking into your apartment and it's all custom furniture, designer lighting, beautiful colors.
Yeah, super fancy.
Exactly. And then there are all the extra services they provide.
Oh, like what?
Well, they'll have things like 24/7 concierge service, daily housekeeping. They might even give you like a personalized welcome package when you arrive.
Oh, wow. It's those little things that make it feel so special, right?
Yeah, definitely. But of course, all that luxury comes with a price tag.
So for someone who's thinking about going all out, what kind of budget should they have in mind?
It's tough to say exactly because it varies so much, but these luxury residences are definitely an investment. You're paying for that exclusivity, the prime location, and the personalized service.
Yeah, makes sense. So for our listeners who are maybe dreaming about that kind of luxury stay, any advice for them?
Well, research is key. Spend some time on the websites of the places that look interesting, read reviews from other guests, and compare the amenities they offer. And don't be afraid to call the residences directly and ask about pricing and availability.
Great advice. It's about finding the right balance between what you want and what you can afford. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the booking process itself. The blog has some tips for that too.
All right.
So, where do people even start?
The first thing, before you do anything else, is to really think about what you need. What are your priorities for this trip? How long are you staying? What amenities are must-haves for you? And what size and type of apartment do you need?
Right. Figure out the basics first.
Yeah, it's easy to get carried away with all the options, but having a clear picture of your needs will make the whole process so much easier.
Yeah, I think that's good advice for planning any kind of trip.
Mm.
So, you figure out what you need, what then?
The blog suggests making a comparison table, which is a great way to keep track of everything and compare different apartments side by side.
I love that idea, like a little spreadsheet or something.
Exactly. It helps you see the differences between places really clearly.
That's smart. So you're comparing the apartments. What else do you need to think about?
Definitely check reviews from other people who have stayed there. They can give you a really good sense of what it's actually like.
Oh yeah, reviews can be so helpful. Like getting an inside scoop.
For sure. And of course, location is super important.
Of course.
Think about how close it is to public transportation, the things you want to see and do, the kinds of restaurants and shops you like.
Right. Make it easy to get around and enjoy the area.
Exactly. So finally, the actual booking part. Any tips for getting the best deals and avoiding problems?
I'm all ears.
The most important thing. Book in advance, especially if you're going during a busy time.
Right, because places book up fast.
Exactly. Plus, if you book early, you often get better prices.
Oh, nice. So to sum it all up, what's the best advice for booking a service apartment in Wanchai?
Be prepared, do your research,
Well,
and book early. If you do those things, you'll be all set for a great trip.
perfect. So we've covered a lot. We know what service apartments are, what Wanchai is like, and how to find the best options for our trip.
Yeah, we've got a good overview.
But before we wrap things up, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, this idea of Wanchai's unique spirit.
Yeah.
What makes it so special? Why are service apartments such a good way to experience that?
It's hard to put into words, but Wanchai has this energy. It's a place where history and modern life collide in this really cool way. It's constantly evolving, but it never forgets its past.
Yeah, I'm starting to see what you mean. It's more than just old meets new. It's deeper than that.
It's like you can be walking down the street and pass an ancient temple, and then right next to it, there's this trendy rooftop bar with amazing views. You can have dim sum for breakfast and then go to a cutting-edge art exhibit in the evening.
So it's like a constant mix of tradition and innovation. And that creates this energy that's exciting, but also kind of grounded.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good way to describe it. And service apartments, they put you right in the middle of all that. You can wake up in a restored heritage building and step out your door into a traditional market.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just hop on the subway and you're in a totally different scene, like a modern shopping mall or some kind of futuristic art installation.
So you can easily move between those different worlds.
Exactly. It's all about that feeling of discovery, constantly being surprised and delighted by something new.
So it's more than just seeing the sights. It's about experiencing Wanchai,
Hmm.
the way it really is.
Right. And service apartments give you the flexibility to do that. You can live like a local, even if it's just for a few days.
I'm starting to see why Wanchai is such a popular place, especially for people who want something different,
Hmm.
something more than the usual tourist experience.
For sure.
But before we wrap up, is there anything else people should know? Any downsides to staying in a service apartment in Wanchai?
That's a good question. I mean, they're great, but like with anything, there are things to keep in mind. Like some service apartments, especially the older ones, might not have elevators.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Especially if you have a lot of luggage.
Right. And the amenities might not be as fancy as in a big hotel.
Makes sense. So just do your research and make sure it's the right fit for you.
Exactly.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We talked about what makes Wanchai so unique, what service apartments are like, and how to book the perfect one.
We really have. From the blend of old and new to the tips for finding the best deals.
Yeah, and I love how we talked about that spirit of exploration, how Wanchai is all about discovering new things.
Absolutely. It's a place that really rewards curiosity.
So for our listeners, as we wrap things up, remember, don't just choose a place to stay, choose an experience.
Yeah.
Find a place that speaks to you, a place that makes you want to explore and connect with it.
Choose Wanchai.
Choose Wanchai. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep. Okay, so we know there's a whole range of service apartments in Wanchai, from budget-friendly to super luxurious. I want to talk about those budget-friendly options a bit more. What makes them such a good value?
Well, when you look at the whole package, those budget-friendly service apartments, they can be a really great deal. Often, your rent will include utilities, internet, even weekly cleaning sometime.
Oh, that's nice. It's like all those hidden costs that you don't always think about.
Exactly. So you're basically getting the comforts of home, but with the convenience of a hotel. And it's all at a reasonable price.
That makes sense. Okay, so let's talk about those specific types of affordable options that the blog post mentions.
Okay.
So you talk about studio apartments.
Yeah, studios are great for solo travelers or couples. They're compact, but they're usually designed really well. You have everything you need without feeling too cramped.
Right, so you're not sacrificing comfort.
Exactly.
And what if you need a bit more space? What's the next step up, price-wise?
Then you'd probably be looking at a one-bedroom apartment. They usually have a separate living area, so it's good if you want some extra space or need a place to work, maybe.
Okay, that makes sense. And then for the most budget-conscious travelers, there are those shared apartments.
Right. Shared apartments are awesome for keeping costs down, especially if you're staying for a longer period. You get your own private bedroom, but you share things like the kitchen and living room with other people.
So it's kind of like a mix between a hostel and a private apartment.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good way to meet people, too. Maybe you'll make some friends and get some tips on what to see and do in Wanchai.
That's a good point. It's like a built-in social network.
Exactly.
All right, so let's talk about booking now. The blog post has some advice for finding the best deals.
Okay.
What do they say?
Well, one of the best things you can do is book in advance. The earlier, the better, especially if you're traveling during peak season.
Yeah, that's classic advice for any kind of travel, right?
Pretty much. The early bird gets the worm, as they say.
Or, in this case, a great service apartment.
What else? If you're planning to stay for a while, ask about long-term discounts. Some places offer those, and they can really save you money.
Makes sense. Like, if you're going for work or something and you'll be there for a few months.
Exactly. And then, of course, there are sometimes seasonal offers. So if you're flexible with your dates, you can often find some good deals that way.
Okay, so be strategic, basically.
Right. Plan ahead, be flexible if you can, and you'll be surprised what kind of deals you can find.
Cool. So we've talked about the budget-friendly options. Now let's switch gears and talk about the high-end service apartments, the really fancy ones.
All right.
The blog post calls them exclusive and sophisticated residences, and they specifically mention the Luna and the Johnston. What are those places like?
They're incredible. They offer a completely different experience. Think spacious layouts, modern design, really high-end everything, the appliances, the furniture. It's all top-notch.
Yeah.
And they're in the best parts of Wanchai.
So it's like a step up, not just in terms of the space, but in the whole vibe.
Definitely. It's about a certain lifestyle, you
Huh,
know?
get it.
Imagine walking into your apartment and it's all custom furniture, designer lighting, these beautiful color palettes. It's like something out of a magazine.
Wow, that sounds amazing. So it's really an experience, not just a place to sleep.
Exactly. And then there are all the services they provide, too.
Like what kind of services?
They'll have things like a 24/7 concierge who can help you with anything you need, daily housekeeping to keep your apartment spotless, and you might even get a special welcome package when you arrive. Just little things to make you feel pampered.
Yeah, it's all about those details. But I'm guessing all that comes at a price, right? What kind of budget would someone need for one of these luxury apartments?
It varies a lot, of course. It depends on the specific residence, the size of the apartment, how long you're staying. But you're definitely paying a premium for that level of service and exclusivity.
So it's an investment. But for some people, it's worth it.
Exactly. It's about treating yourself to something special.
Okay, so for those listeners who are thinking about splurging on a luxury service apartment, any advice?
Do your homework. Really research the places that look interesting to you. Look at their websites, read reviews from other guests, compare what they offer. And don't be afraid to contact them directly and ask questions about pricing and availability.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
It's like anything else, the more informed you are, the better decisions you'll make. All right, so let's talk about the booking process itself now. The blog post has some practical tips for that.
Yeah.
So before you even start looking at apartments, what should people do?
The most important thing is to really understand what you need. What are your priorities for this trip? How long are you staying? What amenities are absolutely essential? And what size and type of apartment would work best for you?
Right, so figure out the non-negotiables.
Exactly. Having a clear picture of your needs will help you narrow down the options and make the whole booking process much smoother.
That's good advice for any kind of trip, I think. It's so easy to get overwhelmed with all the choices out there.
It really is.
Yeah.
So once you know what you're looking for, what's the next step?
Yeah, what then?
The blog post recommends creating a comparison table. It's a great way to keep track of the different apartments you're considering and compare them side by side.
Oh, yeah, I love that idea. Like a little spreadsheet where you can list all the important details.
Exactly. It helps you visualize the differences between the apartments and makes it easier to choose the one that best meets your needs.
That's so smart.
Yeah.
So you're making a comparison table. What else do you need to pay attention to?
Don't forget to read reviews from other guests. They can give you a much better sense of what it's actually like to stay at a particular service apartment. Beyond the glossy photos and marketing stuff.
Reviews can be so helpful. It's like getting an insider's perspective.
Totally. And of course, location is always key.
Right, you want to be in a good spot.
Exactly. Think about how close the apartment is to public transportation, the attractions you want to see, the kinds of restaurants and shops you like.
Yeah, you don't want to spend your whole trip commuting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about maximizing your time and making sure you have a seamless and enjoyable experience.
Okay, so we've figured out our needs, we're comparing apartments, we're checking reviews, we're thinking about location. What about the actual booking part? Any tips for getting the best deal and avoiding any problems?
Well, like we talked about before, booking in advance is always a good idea. Service apartments, especially the popular ones, can book up quickly, especially during peak season. So booking early guarantees you'll get the apartment you want. And it often gives you access to early bird discounts or special offers.
That's a good point. It's like once you've done all that research and found the perfect place, you don't want to miss out.
Exactly.
Okay, so to wrap up this whole booking section, what's your final piece of advice for our listeners?
Plan ahead, do your research, and book early. If you do those things, you'll be well on your way to a fantastic service apartment experience in Wanchai.
Perfect. So we've talked about different types of service apartments, how much they cost, tips for booking, and even got a glimpse into those luxurious options.
We've covered a lot of ground, yeah. We've really painted a picture of Wanchai as this vibrant and exciting place with a unique approach to accommodation through these service apartments.
Yeah, it's really cool how it all comes together. But before we finish this deep dive, I want to come back to something you mentioned before, that idea of the spirit of Wanchai.
Yeah, it's hard to define, but it's definitely there.
What makes it so special, and why are service apartments such a good way to experience it?
Yeah.
It's hard to define, but it's definitely there. What makes it so special, and why are service apartments such a good way to experience it?
Wanchai, it's kind of a paradox, like you've got all this history, but it's also a very modern place. It's always changing, but it doesn't forget where it came from. And that's what makes it so interesting.
Yeah, it's like that old meets new thing we talked about.
Hmm.
But it's more than just how it looks, right?
Yeah, it's like that in every way. You can walk down the street and see a temple that's been there for hundreds of years. And then right next door, there's this super trendy rooftop bar.
Oh.
Yeah, you could have a traditional dim sum breakfast and then go see some crazy modern art exhibit in the evening. It's all right there.
So it's always changing, but it's also grounded in tradition.
Exactly. And service apartments, they're the perfect way to see all of that. I mean, imagine this. You wake up in this beautiful old building, you step outside, and you're right in the middle of a traditional market. All the sights, the sounds, the smells. It's like you've traveled back in time.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and then you can just hop on the subway and be in a totally different world. Like a giant shopping mall or some kind of futuristic art thing.
So you can easily move between all those different experiences.
That's the beauty of it. It's all about discovery. You never know what you're going to find around the next corner.
So it's not just about checking things off a list. It's about really experiencing Wanchai the way it is now.
Right. And with the service apartment, you're not just a tourist passing through, you're living there, even if it's just for a little while.
Yeah, I get it. It's like you become part of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm totally sold on Wanchai.
Huh.
But is there anything else people should know before they go? Any downsides to staying in a service apartment?
Well, most of them are great, but there are a few things to consider. For example, some of those older buildings, they might not have elevators.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so if you have heavy bags or if stairs are a problem, that's something to keep in mind.
Good point. Anything else?
Also, while most service apartments have really good amenities, they might not be as fancy as what you'd find in a luxury hotel.
Right, that makes sense.
Like, they might have a gym, but it might be smaller or have less equipment.
Okay, so just be realistic about your expectations.
Exactly. And one more thing. Wanchai is generally a safe place, but you should still be careful, just like you would in any big city.
Of course.
Be aware of your surroundings, especially in crowded areas, and probably don't walk around alone late at night.
That's always good advice, no matter where you are.
Yeah, definitely. Just use common sense. Be smart about it.
Okay, great. So I think we've covered just about everything. We talked about what makes Wanchai so special, all the different types of service apartments, and how to make sure you have a great experience when you book one.
Yeah, we really went deep on this one. From the history and culture of Wanchai to the practical tips for finding the perfect place to stay.
Yeah, I feel like I'm ready to book my trip right now.
Yeah.
But for our listeners, as we wrap things up, I want to leave you with this thought. Don't just choose a place to stay. Choose an experience. Find a place that really speaks to you, that makes you want to get out there and explore and really connect with it.
Choose Wanchai.
Choose Wanchai. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.